Oh. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to all officers. Just to let you know quickly, we have got a translator here if anybody wants to come in on Welsh or Spanish or whatever. I don't know if it stretches that far, but we have got translated in the chamber for you. As I said, good afternoon and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Swansea Bay City Regional Joint Scrutiny Committee on Wednesday, the 2nd July 2025. I'm Councillor Tim Bowen and I will be chairing the meeting. A few housekeeping. If you want to speak, if you could raise your electronic hands, and when you're speaking, if you could please make sure that your video is on so we can see who's asking the questions. If you do need to use the chat function, could you just make it for any problems or anything like that, or just to let Tom know that you need assistance. For the purpose of declarations, I would like to confirm that we are going to scrutinise items 4 to 11. Democratic Services have received the following apologies: Councillor Holland, Councillor Bowen, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Cundy and Councillor Sparks. Moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any, please?
Chair,
John?
So agenda item number 4, I will dial out to declare an interest of the review of the PMO resources.
Okay, lovely, thank you. No more? No. Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, and these are on pages 3 to 26. These cover both the committee's meetings on the 13th of the 1st, 25, and the 18th of the 3rd, 25. Has anybody got any questions on them, please? No? I'm happy to propose. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Chris. Right, before we move on to item 4. Oh, sorry. Members, if you do not indicate the contrary, then I will take it that these minutes are approved.
I see no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, those minutes have been approved as accurate.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Before we move on to item 4, future of the POMO, any officers who will need to leave for this item may do so now. Tom, if you can let me know, please.
You can see that Jonathan Burns has left the meeting, Chair, so I'll call him back in once we finish this item. Okay,
thank you. Item 4, future role of the Programme Portfolio Management Office, pages 27 to 52. This is going to be taken, I believe, jointly by Debbie Smith and Chris Moore. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's probably easier if I start and then perhaps Chris can add where necessary. I'm assuming, Chair, that everybody's had a chance to read the report. I'll take you through it, not in detail because it's all set out for you, but I'll highlight a couple of perhaps of the more pertinent points in the report. I'm presenting it as the Monitoring Officer for City Deal. I haven't actually conducted the review. It's been done by officers in Carmarthenshire. Cheryl Reynolds has been involved together with Paul Thomas, who's led it. Paul can't be here today, unfortunately, but I can present, as I say, the summary of the report. But if it's any of the questions of the committee go into the detail of who was seen and who was spoken to and who said what, I'm not going to be able to deal with that level of detail, but hopefully I can assist in most of the questions that are raised, Chair. Okay. So the introduction sets out that this review of the POMO was approved by the Joint Committee back on the 13th of February, and the terms of reference were agreed by the Joint Committee at the time. You'll see the purpose and the scope of the report. It's on page 3 there. It was looking at the role and functions of the POMO that will continue to be relevant over the remaining term of the city deal, because as you know, it's been going for quite a while and lots of the projects are well established now. So it's looking at what does the city deal need for the remainder of its term, looking at the governance framework, the decision-making structures to see what the key parts of the city deal delivers, and then looking at aligning that with the corporate joint committee to see whether there are any synergies, to see whether there are any duplications that could possibly result in some streamlining of the governance arrangements and the streamlining of the POMO. So I won't deal with the background and some of the content of the report, but perhaps if I can take you to page 5, at paragraph 4.3, it deals with the governance arrangements there and the administrative factors that the review considered. And that second paragraph there, suggestions made during the consultation phase included. And if I can take you to those in particular, because they are relevant to the recommendations. So there's 3 bullet points there. And the suggestions made were combining the 2 joint scrutiny committees, because we've got joint scrutiny for City Deal and we've got joint scrutiny for the CJC, and whether there's an overlap there in the role of the joint scrutiny function. The second bullet point, subsuming the Economic Strategy Board, which we've got now under the City Deal, and possibly subsuming that within the Private Sector Advisory Board, which is currently part of the CJC. So is there again duplication of the ESB and the Private Sector Advisory Board, and whether they could have a more joined up function? And then whether actually there were synergies between the CJC and the City Deal, so much so that possibly the City Deal could sit within the CJC. So those are the sort of suggestions that were coming out as part of the review and are documented in the report. There's already been some rationalisation of the arrangements because, as you know, or you may know, the joint committee for the City Deal sits on the same day now as the CJC, so that there is more coordinated arrangements for officers and members to attend rather than having them on separate days. So there's that sort of process of having those alignments has already started. If I can now take you to page 7 and paragraph 4.7, which talks about the future resource requirements, because that's been a particular focus of the review. It sets out there under 4.7, the review has considered the future support needs for the City Deal and the CJC and has identified an imbalance and an overlap in the support requirements. So it's set out there, the City Deal is managed by the POMO, responsible for the daily operations of the portfolio. It oversees the administration of the programme, the City Deal programme, and the overarching governance, with the overarching governance resting with each council, but the POMO makes sure that business cases are approved and that the business cases are follow the proper trajectory, that change control mechanisms are followed, and that business cases are then seen through to their final conclusion. Now, it should be noted, as it says there in paragraph 3, considerable progress has been made across all 9 programmes. So those business cases are now very much advanced. So the question was raised as part of this review, what now is needed in terms of the role of the POMO in taking those business cases through to conclusion, because actually a lot of the work is front-loaded in approving the business cases, helping those business cases get off the ground and they're fully supported. That work has now been done and we're now really into monitoring outputs and performance and deliverables. So it's a different sort of role than when City Deal first started. So it's set out there in the bullet points really what is needed for the future, where it is really around the monitoring of outputs, and supporting gateway reviews, which are now less frequent than they were previously, dealing with marketing and communication, and supporting responses and delivery of recommendations of external regulators and internal audits. So the work of the POMO has shifted really from being really heavily front-loaded to now monitoring of those outputs and dealing with marketing, communication, and those kinds of things. Now, conversely, the CJC is probably short of resources because that CJC programme is growing in line with Welsh Government direction of travel at the moment, is to put more work through the CJC. So is that imbalance has sort of been identified as part of the review. The review has identified that particularly the CJC will need support in the following areas, and these are bullet pointed as well at the bottom of page 7. Governance, financial management, marketing, communication, organising events and board meetings. The Private Sector Advisory Board will need support, and there's wider support in areas of partnership, transport planning and economic well-being. So you've got a tailing off of support from the city deal, but a growing of support needs by the CJC. So the report, the review conclusions have highlighted 3 potential options, and those are set out in pages 8 onwards for the report. So option 1 is the status quo, the do nothing option, keep it as it is, and the pros and cons are set out of that option, and basically that's considered to be not a viable option because the funding will run out by April 27. So the do nothing option is just kicking the can down the road for a little while, and we will need more financing by the end of the next financial year. There is a variation of that option where we could possibly sell services to the CJC and generate some income there, which again will produce a little bit of income, possibly allow the current arrangements to continue till October 27. But again, that's not really a viable long-term solution. So the next option, option 2, was closing the POMO altogether and allowing each of the constituent authorities to take the work in-house, because each of the authorities is running their own programmes anyway, but they will have to do more work if the POMO is disbanded and that work is taken in-house. Again, the pros and cons of that option are set out in the report. I won't go through them. But option 3 is the preferred option, and that's the one that's being recommended to Joint Committee. And that is that the POMO is reconfigured and incorporated into the CJC, which is what I've just spoken to you about as this part of the suggestions raised really as part of the review. Now, the final proposals are not yet known. So what this report says, option 3 is the recommended option, but it will need further work. And that further work will determine in detail, and if I can take you to 5.3 in the report, and I'll read from there. Under this option, final proposals will identify in detail what residual work activities require coordination and support on a regional scale. So it will need further consultation with the POMO, with the Joint Committee members, with the project and programme SROs and the 4 chief executives and the directors of Regen, and it will need to be aligned with the work needed by the CJC going forward and its various decision-making forums. So what it's saying then, option 3, is that looks like the best model, but it will need further work done between the city deal and the CJC to determine in detail what the residual workload looks like, and that will determine what workforce is needed from the POMO to deliver that future support requirements. So it's the preferred option but not but the detail is not yet available. What is being recommended is, if I can take you to the final page of the report, the review proposes that the Joint Committee commissions the further development of option 3, with final recommendations being presented before the end of the calendar year, subject to the approval of the CJC to work with the City Deal to facilitate this work. So it needs the approval of both joint committees to undertake that further work. It needs to be a collaborative piece of work. And then 6.2, because the governance related aspects would not increase the resourcing requirements, it just means that officers report, possibly not to City Deal, but they report to the CJC. It's proposed that the work commences by the constituent councils to seek authority to incorporate the decision-making structures of the City Deal into the CJC, and that the Joint Committee endorse this approach. So what that means is, although that work, that collaborative working, it needs to be done over the next few months to work out what the future requirements are in terms of support from the POMO, we can get on in the meantime with aligning the governance structures. So there's nothing stopping each of the councils starting to put those plans in place to align the governance arrangements. And the reason that needs to be done over a period of time is that any change to the City Deal governance arrangements has to be approved by each of the constituent councils. The Joint Committee of the City Deal can't make that decision. It needs to be taken by the 4 councils themselves. So what will happen in reality, and it's a little bit complex, but this report will be taken to the Joint Committee to approve in principle. It will then go back to each of the constituent authorities to go to their cabinet and their council to say, are you happy to proceed with proposals to align the governance arrangements, i.e. to disband joint scrutiny, to subsume the ESB into the Private Sector Advisory Board, and to really start that streamlining process now. If those individual councils approve that plan, it will go back to the Joint Committee of the City Deal to finally approve it, and then a deed of variation can be entered into, making those changes that would mean that the City Deal is subsumed into the CJC. So it needs to go back to individual councils first for approval, then back to the Joint Committee for final approval. So it's a little bit complex, and that's because the governance arrangements are designed in that way to make sure that each individual council retains control over the decision making. The City Deal can't just carry on and do it without each of the constituent councils first of all approving it. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the report. I hope it sort of makes sense. If you need any information about the nuts and bolts of it, Cheryl might be able to assist. If you need information around the financial bits, Chris can assist you. I think Chris wants to come in next anyway. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Over to you, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Chair. And yeah, I think the report, just to add to what Debbie has stated, which she's gone through quite comprehensively, a lot of the points, but just around some of the background there and the finances, I think, you know, to me, this is an ideal opportunity to take something forward here where actually where we are with Swansea Bay City Deal. The Swansea Bay City Deal was a finite period. It's the 15-year period. When we started this programme back in 2017, 2018, we put in place a funding mechanism which was actually proposed really for the what I class at that point in time, the primary period of the operation of the activity. That's getting the projects up and running, getting them through, getting them delivered. And then after that 5-year period, the anticipation was that it would have been monitoring some of the outputs only. Unfortunately, for various things to do with delivery and capital projects, that didn't quite work out that way. But just to put some of the context of the funding in place, the original funding was that actually there was a 50,000 contribution for the first 5 years from each of the partners, and there were 8 partners on the table at that point in time. While this is 4 constituent authorities, there were 8 partners contributing to it, and we also then top sliced 1.5% off the project costs. Now that money is running out, as is said in the report, at the end of 26-27. And some of what option 3 will provide is alternatives as to how we can extend that period for what needs to be probably a downsizing of the monitoring and the functionality within the city deal. But I think it's fair to say we're all observing there's an upward trend in terms of the workload and the delivery of some of the items around the CJC. And there's opportunity to some extent, and this is where the work needs to be investigated further, to use some of those staff possibly to overlap into the CJC. That will extend the opportunities for the staff, but it'll also allow us to get something in place in terms of what we got to deliver for the rest of the 15-year period in terms of monitoring. Because whilst the monitoring of the Swansea Bay City deal is going to reduce, and as the project get complete, there's less work to be done there. There will be a responsibility for the Swansea Bay City deal to monitor and produce outputs back to Welsh Government and UK Government for the 15-year period. I think the other thing to recognise is there is actually some difference in terms of the type of information that possibly Welsh Government will want compared with the UK Government, because the UK Government did actually reprofile some of their funding last year and the year before, so they actually reduced the term of the 15 years in terms of the funding profile that they were funding the project. So just a little bit more context around that, and also just to sort of highlight that, you know, that the reference that Debbie made to the 50% SLA option, which is one of the alternative options, that was there as a scenario and an example as to how you could extend the life and you could actually complement the work on the actual CJC. But there may be a permutation around that once the work is done, if we continue with option C, around something in between that, where service level agreements can be put in place in terms of delivery to try and utilise the staff to the optimum position, and also complement some of the heavier work that's now coming through in terms of the CJCs and in delivering that size. So I just wanted to add a little bit of context there, hopefully that actually adds to what Debbie said and puts a little bit more understanding on the overall proposal and the picture. But there is quite a bit of work still to do in terms of reviewing the detail, whilst some of the governance and items have come together. So thank you, Chair, Diolch, and I'll certainly help with any questions with Cheryl and Debbie.
Yeah, thank you both. That was really informative, and I think it's you've got a lot of hard work ahead of you to come to a conclusion of where we're going to move forward on this. I can see Chris Hawley, if you'd like to come in, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have to say this report doesn't actually, the options aren't exactly what I would have thought they would have been. The reason I say that is, if you look at the City Deal prod, there's still, you know, this is in the public domain, quite a number of projects. I think it's 19 in total left to be done. So are those 19 going to be done in the next, you know, year or so to get us to 2027? So I think the merger scheme, I can understand why you'd want to do it financially, and to some extent it follows on from what the Welsh Government want us to do. But I have some query about the structure of it and what would be the consequence of the City Deal. But the whole idea of the City Deal was that we extended it right across the area. We incorporated the full authorities so that we had this, if you like, combined effort. The CCG, whatever it's called now, I don't know. It's got, was it CW, the
CJC.
CSWW, CJC, whatever. Very appropriate, isn't it? You know, that it doesn't seem to me to be the same thing. You know, the project, the City Deal project was one thing. This is another thing, and I'm not sure whether I can see what the officers are putting together as a reference to merge it and to make it feel comfortable within that. But I'm not sure as members that we would be happy with that, because I think it takes away some scrutiny, and I think it takes away some of the democratic decisions that would have to be made in it. I think it needs a little bit further work doing on it. And I think if that was the case, then I would like to see that further work done before any decisions are made about this. Thank you.
Chris?
Chair, can I come in and respond?
Yes, yeah.
Couple of comments I'd make. First point, the South West Wales CJC and the Swansea Bay City Deal are different things altogether. I agree 100% with that. Swansea Bay City Deal is the delivery of defined projects, and there are 9 projects. I know you referred to something like 19 to be delivered. I think what you're referring to is the programs within the projects.
Yes.
So if you take, for instance, as an example, Pendrawl, there are a number of programs within it, but a substantial part of Pendrawl, for instance, which is the core Canalvan, is opening in the next couple of months. So I think the point about what we're trying to achieve is, out of the 9 projects, which originally started at 11 or 12 and went down to 9 as they were phased, those 9 projects are all in delivery stage or in parts in complete. So Swansea Waterfront is complete. So there's a lot less work required there from the PMO office than what was required when we were developing a business case, monitoring, managing the business case, submitting the business case to Welsh Government, receiving it back, queries, etc. So the emphasis in terms of the workload of the PMO has changed, and I think that's transparent by the fact that actually staffing have already been downsized through natural movements there, and we're still keeping on top of the work. What we've got to look to is the future in terms of the delivery of the outputs over the 15-year period, in being able to provide that to any of the government departments in terms of what they want. But I think the principle of what we're working to is there is less work required at this point in time from the PMO office than was previously required, because the projects are all up and running. Some are complete, some are actually in delivery stage, but there are none that actually haven't actually gone through, and that's the workload that we're looking at around that period. And coming back to my conversation point about the primary period and the secondary period of the 15-year period, what we're trying to achieve is keeping the resilience there, that we're able to do that without additional cost to the authorities. As is presented at the moment, by the end of 2026, if we carry on the way we are, I'm going to have to be coming back to constituent authorities and asking for more funds if we keep the structure as it is. And I think we're all very aware of the challenges around the funding within local authorities in the moment, and we've got to prioritise every day. So is that the right thing to do? Is questionable. But I think also recognising on the other side that part of the challenge is the workload on the CJCs, which is different because it's more about regional working and about regional plans, development plans, transport plans, economic development plans. But if we can't get this balance right, what will happen is that there'll be an increase in the levy on the CJCs as well. So that'll again be another pressure on the local authority. So it's trying to balance that context with where we think the work is going to go. But 100%, we can't come away from our responsibilities that we got within that 15-year period of what we've committed to deliver. But they are defined projects with defined timelines, after that, they come back to the local authority. Well, they are with the local authorities. And I think that's another thing that actually is very significant with Swansea Bay City deal, is all the projects, the risks and the rewards fall back to the constituent authorities, the individual authorities. So they've got to deliver on those and make sure that they deliver on them.
I understand that, but you know, we were sold this, and the public was sold this as a £1.3 billion project across, and you know, I accept what you're saying about the workloads and what have you, but my concern is that, you know, we need to. I think our constituency authorities need to understand what we are going to do, and if basically what we're saying is the city deal will end at a particular defined point, and we need to make that abundantly clear, because I don't think the public realise that. I think the idea the public have is that the Swansea Bay, the city deal will carry on, and I think that's something that, you know, with what you're saying, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I understand the financial pressures that come with it, and the CJCs, and nobody knows where that's going to end, where they're going to end up yet anyway. So I understand all that, but my feeling is that we've got to explain to the public that it's coming to an end.
You're 100% right. The 15-year period was part of the city deal agreement originally. It was a defined growth deal, and you may be right actually that the public don't understand that, and that probably hasn't been helped by the fact that Cardiff has got a different model, and Cardiff's model is different in terms of extending more indefinitely. Having said that, they have actually brought some of the functionality together with the CJC, but the type of grants and the type of funding that they did was different. What we created in South West Wales is we created a defined deal on the basis of defined projects. You may be right that the public don't realise that.
But we've got our city deal is more of a, if you like, a delivery model as opposed to a model for anything else. Yeah. And we've got to make that absolutely clear to the public. And you are right, but Cardiff is different to everyone else anyway. So I accept on that. But I do think that we have to make absolutely sure that whatever we do now, if we go for option 3, which obviously is the one that it makes the most sense, is that the public are aware of what we're doing.
And I think there is opportunity through working through this at the moment that we can link it in with the economic development work stream within the CJC, that actually longer term they could have benefits there in terms of what we're delivering on economic development, which there is an overlap there. But, so, you know, this is part of the work that needs to be done over the next 6 months to sort of bed that in terms of the principles.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, before I fetch Councillor Cundy, and I just come in myself. As Derek knows, we're both on the other committee as well, and we've had that this morning. And, you know, questions have been raised in quite a few of them meetings about what local authorities are putting into the other committee, and we get no return at the moment. You know, we seem to be putting in, and there's nothing coming of it. And like you said, Chris, it's more to do with the infrastructure rather than the big projects. So, you know, there is a lot of work, and like Chris said, we do need to inform the public of what is actually the difference in the committees and what way we are going forward. Yeah, so I'll fetch Councillor Cundy and Derek.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My apologies for being late. I just reinforcing really, I think what you've just said. In the meeting this morning, there seems to be quite some concern about actual funding of the CJC itself and the projects within that. An awful lot coming together, and obviously I appreciate the transition, and that makes sense. And option 3 makes sense. It's just that, if you like, there are sort of some nebulous bits in there which we are really vague. I don't know if you could agree with me on that one. Thank you.
All I would say is I think some of the expectations in terms of the regional transport plan and development plan, etc., are going to call substantial money. and that money that needs to be a further dialogue with Welsh Government. And I don't know whether you had the regional transport plan this morning. I can't remember what was on the agenda, but if so, you had a big piece of work there, but there's a long way to go to see the delivery of it. And a lot of funding.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
I don't need to say any more then.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you for that, Derek. Councillor Morgan?
Oh, I think Sonia was before me.
Sorry, Councillor Reynolds. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm, say, new member of this committee, struggling to catch up with the debate and the discussions here. So just clarification, really, for me. There is mention of governance arrangements, as in, the review will include, etc., in one of the appendices. What are the proposals? Is it a proposal this committee will continue to exist, or that it will go somewhere? Someone has to keep the review of the projects and the monitoring of the projects going forward under close scrutiny, and people who know what's happening. So just some clarification on that, please.
Do you want to take that, Debbie?
Yeah.
Please,
if that's okay, Chair, I'll deal with that.
Yeah.
Yes, what's envisaged, Councillor Reynolds, is that the work of the city deal, and as Councillor Holly has said, there's still a lot of work still to be done on the city deal, albeit different work, will be done within the remit of the CJC. And as Chris has mentioned, that in the CJC there's an economic development strand of work, and the city deal projects are all around economic development, and they really will sit within the CJC work. So whether that, in terms of how it's going to actually work on the ground, that's yet to be decided, and that's the piece of work that needs to be done. But it could well be that the CJC has separate meetings dealing with city deal projects, or it could be that it forms a little subcommittee dealing with city deal work. But whatever that looks like, you will find the city deal projects being considered as part of the CJC framework, and you'll have one joint scrutiny committee dealing with CJC work and city deal work. So there's, at the moment, you've got two separate scrutiny arrangements, and there really would be one overarching scrutiny committee that deals with all of that CJC work, which will include city deal projects within it. Does that sort of make sort of sense around how that might look like?
It clarifies it. My concern would be that there would need to be some greater crossover and perhaps an enlargement of that scrutiny committee.
That's something that the next piece of work will look at, Councillor Reynolds, in terms of what recommendations come out at the end of it as to how to make sure that all the work is covered and is properly scrutinised.
Okay, Councillor Reynolds. Okay, Councillor Morgan.
Good, thanks, Chair. No, I just wanted to come in. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's a bit of muddy in the waters, really. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I just want us to make sure that we're going to scrutinise the city deal over its 15 years and what have you, and that doesn't get muddied and reset as we move along, because I'm looking at the figures from today in terms of jobs created, and there's a heck of a long way to go on any of the job targets that are in all of our reports. I don't think there's any project really that's got even to half of where they ought to be. So, these are really important things. GVA went out the window. That was it. We could talk about GVA at the start then. No, hold on. You can't talk about it now. We can't measure it. But yet it was in all the documents at the start. You know what I mean? And then UK government, no, you can't use that anymore. So, we seem to be chipping away here. And really, somebody needs to be keeping laser focus on whether this Swansea-based city deal is any good at the end of the 15 years, So, I would certainly disagree with anything that muddies that water. Somebody needs to be looking at these things because it's important. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Cheryl?
Oh, thank you, Chair. So after today, the report will need to be considered by the South West Wales, no, by the Swansea Bay City Deal Joint Committee on the 10th of July. And what I'm hearing, what I've heard up until now is that your concern as a scrutiny committee is the dilution of your scrutiny remit. So I can certainly build that into the feedback. So when they do consider the setup going forward, is that there's a strong scrutiny resource available to scrutinise what's going on, in not just in terms of economic development, but in terms of transport planning, because they'd have to look at the whole gambit. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fine. Chris?
Yeah, Chair, thanks. I just wanted to come back on Giles's point, really. I totally agree with him. I don't think UK government or Welsh government is going to dilute their expectation in terms of the outputs, which you're talking about there in terms of the jobs. We are going to be accountable for that, and that will have to be part of the conclusion of the city deal. And that's what I see as longer term, up to the 15-year period, the type of information that we got to report back. And I'm also very conscious that the funding agreements that came in place from Welsh Government, UK Government to Swansea Bay City Deal and to the individual projects was very much linked to the business plan, which is linked to the outputs. And they have got options to claw back money if outputs aren't delivered. So I think all officers, if there's any reassurance, are very conscious of that in terms of delivering the outputs. But I think you are right in recognising that outputs from when we started this pre-COVID have been more challenging to deliver, and that is something that we will have to have some dialogue on. But that is what I see going forward as part of the critical path of whatever form the PMO office is in, is making sure that they collate together those outputs and we are able to monitor them and report on them.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Chris. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask before we move on, please? No? Right, I'd like to thank Chris, Debbie and Cheryl for all that information. The recommendation is listed on page 27 of the agenda pack. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder?
I propose it.
Seconder, please. Mike? Yeah, thank you. If members do not indicate to the contrary, then I will take it this report is approved.
I can see no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this report has been approved.
Okay, thank you. If we can just wait a couple of seconds so we can fetch John Burns back in, please.
Chair, if it's acceptable, I'd like to drop out now. Stephen Aldridge-Jones is here to present the finance reports, if that's acceptable to you. If that's all right, I'll leave you in his hands.
Yeah, that's fine, Chris. Thank you very much
Okay.
For your time this afternoon.
Okay, diolch.
Thanks.
Chair, is it
Well,
acceptable? Sorry, Chair, is it possible for me to leave as well? I have another meeting. Thank you very much
as well. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
John has rejoined. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Moving on to item 5, internal audit report, pages 53 to 64. Would officers like to add anything? And this is going to be presented by Charlotte.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Charlotte Hodges and I'm the Internal Audit and Counter Fraud Manager for Pembrokeshire County Council. As you'll be aware, we carry out an annual internal audit on the arrangements within the Swansea Bay City Deal and report the findings to the Programme Board, the Joint Scrutiny Committee and the Joint Committee. The terms of reference for the 24-25 internal audit review were agreed by the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Committee on the 17th of December 2024. We then undertook the internal audit review during Q4 24-25. The purpose of the audit was to try and provide assurance that the arrangements within the Swansea Bay City Deal are adequate and effective, so that the aims and objectives of the region can be delivered effectively. All work is carried out using an evidence-based approach. There were a number of areas which we included within the scope for 24-25, which included follow-up of previous recommendations, governance arrangements, project management and monitoring arrangements, financial management and risk management. The assurance rating provided continues to be substantial, which means it's been determined that there is a sound system of governance, internal control, financial management and risk management, with internal controls operating effectively and being consistently applied to support the achievement of objectives. This is the 5th consecutive year that the audit has received a substantial assurance rating, and it's pleasing to be able to continue to provide this level. There are 2 recommendations relating to budget setting, which has already been implemented and is later on this agenda, and service level agreements, which is very closely linked to the outcome of the previous agenda item that you've just heard. As always, we're grateful to the team for their support during the process. And thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you have on the report.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Charlotte. Do any members have any questions, please? No, I can't see any. As previously mentioned, this report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you. If it's okay, sorry, Chair, if it's okay, I'll drop out the meeting now as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Moving on to item 6, Audit Wales Audit Inquiries Letter, pages 65 to 86, and this is for Stephen Aldridge-Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, this is on page 65 to 86 of the report pack. Each year, Audit Wales formally requests information from management and those charged with governance regarding several areas of governance and assurance. So as you can see, the letter asks us to consider financial risks, controls, policies and procedures in operation for the City deal. And our responses to this letter are similar to those in the previous year's letter, with no issues being noted. So it's a really straightforward and routine document. So there's not much more I can add to it, to be honest, Chair. Just wondering if anybody has any questions.
Any members have any questions, please? No, can't see any. As previously mentioned, this report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Moving on to item 7, Swansea Bay City Deal Portfolio Business Case, pages 87 to 192. John Burns, please.
Thanks, Chair. So just to remind all board members, we are required by both governments to update our portfolio business case. This is our go-to document, the current status, if you like, of where we are across the 9 headline business cases. So in the document, you have an executive summary and then 5 cases. So just to summarize: strategic, economic, commercial, financial and management cases. And then there's a whole host of relevant appendices as well included in the document. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key updates and to reaffirm that we're on track, and then just go through some of the key changes, highlighting some of the executive summary boxes that are in blue in the document. So as we all know, Swansea Bay City Deal is a £1.3 billion initiative portfolio across the South West Wales region, 9 headline business cases, projects and programmes. That is worth, we're estimating, around 1.8 to 2 billion pounds to the regional economy, and over 9,000 jobs will be created as a consequence. That's until 2033. It's funded by the UK and Welsh Government through the City Deal funds, but also through the public sector and private sector. So the whole idea of this portfolio is to help accelerate regional economic recovery, particularly through infrastructure and some skills developments as well. So what hopefully the board will see and has seen in recent months is a lot of the infrastructure start to come to fruition. So you can actually see it physically happen across the region. But going back to the business case, what I can say is that it remains valid. It is strategically aligned. There is value for money. It is commercially viable. It's affordable and deliverable. There's lots of detail in the document that makes it there are questions to be raised around some of the increased costs, but currently we are delivering the portfolio. And then the impacts associated with it, everybody is still signed up to what they will deliver and the impacts of those business case delivery. So we are acknowledging that delivery is slower than anticipated, but we are progressing with all partners. They are all committed, as I said. and the benefits are continuing to be realised. It will accelerate as we move from delivery, the builds, into the operations. And what we're yet to see coming through the city deal is those formal evaluations to help demonstrate the impact being made. But within this year and future years, we will see those impact assessments coming through. So in terms of the process to update the business case, all sections were reviewed by the Portfolio Office and the team members associated with it. We had consultation exercises with all projects and programs. We had 2 phases to do that. This is the first iteration of the portfolio business case to incorporate Q4 monitoring. So it's a little bit delayed in the year as to what we normally are, but the Q4 monitoring reflecting the end of year financials and status is recorded in the business case. And the consultation draft was shared and approved by both our programme board and joint committee. All appendices that you will have or have access to, they've all been reviewed, updated or rationalised. So if I move on to each case, Chair, just to summarise what the key differences are between this year and last year's iteration. So start with a strategic case. So this is to demonstrate alignment to relevant strategies and policy. There's a case for change in there, demonstrating the need and the scope of the proposal, the business case. So, as I said, all information and documents have been reviewed. It is still strategically aligned. All programs and projects are included in it, and we have included things like UK government's Invest 2035, the modern industrial strategy, the stuff around corporate joint committees for the South West Wales, particularly around the corporate plan, and making sure that all projects have alignment in appendices 1.1A and 1.1B. We've also made sure that there's alignment to existing initiatives across the region. So we've got various other regional entities like the Regional Learning Skills Partnership, the Celtic Freeport, Digital Connectivity and Corporate Joint Committee. And then the only final section of note is around the risks. So all of our red risks and issues that we report quarterly, they have now been updated in the business case to reflect the current status of those red issues and risks. The economic case is around identifying that the proposal delivers best value for money for the public pound to society, but also wider and social and environmental effects as well. So we have updated Table 2.1, which summarises all the detail of the projects and programmes, headline information, but we haven't received any further economic appraisals in 24-25. However, we do have some coming through the pipeline, and the next one will be Pentre Owl for Canolfan, Zone 1, and that will be reported later in 25-26, this financial year. We've also included current jobs in section 2.7 on the economic case. If I move on to the third case, which is commercial. So this is about demonstrating that the preferred option will result in a viable procurement and well-structured deal between the public sector and its service providers. So what we've done is updated the procurement policy, reordered some sections within there, particularly around the new regulations around procurement. We've removed the requirements for EU-funded projects because that's now coming to an end. And we've updated the procurement section on the key procurements to date and the forthcoming procurements, what we call the procurement pipeline, and that's in Appendix 3.1. We've also revised stuff around the construction impact assessment, so we currently report on that quarterly. And of the builds that we are aware of, there is a £44.9 million funding gap, which key mitigations, as it says in the report, are being investigated. And we know that that gap has already closed in recent weeks through additional funding being secured for some of the Neath or Talbot led bids. And we've updated, it's a useful case study, particularly on community benefits in the commercial case for Pentre Owl. So it just demonstrates it's not just about building a building, it's about what happens around that and what benefits there are to the community in the surrounding area for these builds. So that hopefully gives all members a bit of a flavour for what community benefits can be brought through across the City Deal portfolio. The financial case, I'm not going to steal too much of Steve's thunder because he's got Q4 updates later on, but I'll just highlight some of the key things. This is about demonstrating that it's affordable and that the preferred option for each of the projects, including support for the stakeholders and customers for those preferred options. So We are overestimating or estimating over our target of 1.274 billion across the portfolio for the 15 years. That's now increased to 1.373 billion. We've updated the income, expenditure and cash flow forecasts in sections 4.2. We've updated information on the grant drawdown and dissemination. So we know that we have £241 million of City Deal grant awarded. We've receipted 176 million of that, so that's about 63%. 63% of that, has been dispersed to lead delivery organisations from Carmarthenshire Council as the accountable body. We've also reprofiled the portfolio budget. There is a variance in year of 155 million. All that means is that the money is still committed and the investment is still there. It's just taken a bit longer to spend that money. A key mitigation myself and Stephen are doing next week, as it happens, is going through potential reprofiling of the financials with every single project and programme that we have in the portfolio, just to make sure that people are on track for spending their money in future years. The good thing to note is that no project or programme is reporting that there will be an effect to the outputs or investment or benefits across the portfolio across the duration of the 15 years. We also have revised investment profiles around cash flow. So we know that there will be negative cash flows in year 9 and 10 and potentially going on a few extra years, but Stephen may cover that later. And then the final one is around we know that there are financial variances of when the projects are spending, but there's explanations in the business case and in Stephen's Q4 financial monitoring explaining what those are and why we have those financial variances. And Chair, if I go on to the final case, which is the management case. So this is about making sure that robust arrangements are in place for delivery, monitoring and evaluation of the scheme, the portfolio in our case. So we've updated the monitoring and evaluation information, including dashboard presentation. We've got information on risks, issues, benefits, and financial monitoring. So as I said, all of Q4 were incorporated into this version of the business case. We've also have a status and investment summary within the management case. Previously, we had 36 components, if you like, delivered across the 9 business cases. We now have 39. This is largely down to decoupling of some of the Pentra Owl project components. So our 39 deliverables across the portfolio is now articulated in the document. We've also summarised the evaluation framework and the proposals for that. This has come up in recent times in Scrutiny and other governance committees. And this is all around what will be evaluated, when it will be evaluated, etc. We've updated the status on gateway reviews, both at the portfolio and each project and programme level. We've updated information around internal audit and external audit processes, around marketing comms, things around business case status of each project and programme, and key information of our senior responsible owners, our key leads, and then lead into the delivery roadmap at the end of the business case. So, Chair, in summary, those are the key changes, if you like, from last year or the previous year to the 24-25 version. All I would like to do is point out probably 3 things in the business case which feature across the business case. The first one relates to a correction that I need to make. We are reporting this to the government and through Programme Board and Joint Committee, but the number of components I said were 39. They are categorised into different things like initiated, planned, pre-delivery, delivery and completion. There was an error in terms of timing of how many projects were in delivery as opposed to completed. So what we previously said in the version that you have for the board is that we have 16 projects in delivery and 9 completed. There are actually 16 in delivery, 19 in delivery and 6 completed. So we have 3 less completed projects than what we put into the version that you've got. We will issue a redraft of the business case, but ultimately it doesn't change anything other than the timing of when those projects get reported as completed. So that project delivery status summary is throughout the document. The other 2 then, one is on page 77 of the business case, it's table 5.10. That summarises those 39 components with the value, who's delivering them, what they're called, and the status of where they are. So that's worth anybody referencing that table. And then the last one is, I've already mentioned it briefly, is the roadmap. That's on page 78, table 5.7. And that visually shows those 39 components with what has been delivered, the red line of where we currently are, and then what's planned in the future. And what you'll see in that diagram or that table is that there are a few projects that are yet to be determined as to when they'll start and when they'll end. So some of those project components are yet to be determined, but that gives you an appreciation of where we are as a portfolio. So Chair, without going through the document, there's lots of pages in there to read through, but that is an update of the portfolio business case for 24-25.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Do members have any questions, please? Councillor Hawley.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, Jonathan.
Hi there.
A few questions, really. You know, that item 7 on the agenda actually covers 8, 9, and 10 to some extent.
It does.
I think you've definitely stolen Steve's thunder in many ways. Obviously, a lot of this is planned forward, what is likely to happen and what have you. But I think Giles is, like myself, very keen about the projected jobs. We've currently got 900, and I'm not sure where they are, because I know that there was a press release put out on the 26th of June. The city deal, it's on its way. Well, you know, when you think that it's 9-year-old now, we are a long way into it. I know we've got to take 2 years out for COVID, really, but we've got 900 jobs, but you know, we're a long way from the 9,000 that the timing was in. And I understand what you're going to say. You know, they all fell in at the end. Yes, you know, you've said that many times, but there is 2 issues I'd like to say. One is that we've got projects that are finished that's worth 210 million, but then we got 19 projects or items within the projects and valued at 760 million due to come, with a private sector involvement of 133. Where do those figures come from, Jonathan? Because, you know, a lot of the figures, a lot of the money or the investment has been in housing. You know, something like over 500 million was in housing. Where is that going to come? Because we have seen in the Swansea area, and I'm not sure, I can't speak for Carmarthen or Pembroke, but I know about Neath and Talbot. There's been a massive slowdown in the construction business, in houses. So will that affect that figure of 761 million? That's the first question. Yeah. And the second question is, what is the private sector 133 million?
Of what's been secured to date, yeah. So yeah. Good questions, and we do have answers for each of those. And Stephen, if you want to jump in with any of the responses I give, you're more than welcome to. But in relation to the investment, you know, these are forecasts. The 19 that you pick, it's actually 16, because that's the correction that I needed to make. Right, so, right. But there are 16 in delivery, so those things are happening around procurement and build stage. So they're in flight, is what I would call as a project term. So those 19 things are happening for, as you said, the 700 odd million. But from the Homes as Power Stations perspective, what they are estimating is a higher forecast than what they originally anticipated. So even though I said this in Senate scrutiny only last week, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? So everything costs more, but because everything costs more, we also have an increase in investment. So there's no indication, Councillor Holly, that we can't achieve our targets. In fact, people are overestimating what we will be achieving, both jobs related and also investment, and the GVA, the impact of these builds. So every indication we have is that it's higher than anticipated. But as I keep on saying, and you refer to it, until these evaluations come through, you know, I can't pinpoint and say this is where this is evidence. But that said, we have investment forecasts where we know where the private sector funding is coming from for every project, and hopefully, well, not even roughly, with forecasted figures for when they'll come in. So we have that detail, and again, Stephen captures that on a quarterly basis with all projects. And we do have a specific thing then around the private sector forecast. But in conjunction with that, we have to monitor this construction impact assessment, because what we said 5 years ago is going to cost more today. And if we don't build today, it will cost more in the future. So, delaying further with any construction will end up costing lead delivery organisations more. So it's in everybody's interest to try and deliver as soon as we can. The second question, Stephen, do you want to add anything to what I've just said with any numbers or anything? Like that?
Yeah, if that's okay. I've got a breakdown of the private sector. The majority of it to date, so that's till the end of 24-25, is from the digital infrastructure team. I think they had almost 91 million to date. Bear with me, I'm going to go through each spreadsheet. Sorry. And then the Hampshire Homes of Power Station, so they've achieved 16.25 million almost. Sorry, I'm going to bounce around a bit. The Pembroke Dock Marine project, their private sector, just under 16 million. Sorry, campuses. Just over 1 million. Nothing from Pentre Owl as of yet, because that's later on in the project life stage. And then skills and talent, 4.25 million. Sorry, bear with me. Yep, 4.25 million. The supporting innovation, low carbon, just over 1 million. And then Swansea waterfront is 500,000. So as I said, so it's mainly digital infrastructure, and the HAPS projects and PDM are the main contributors to the.
Is the digital one? That's the rollout of the fibre.
Yeah.
Fibre, is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Fibre, 5G, IoT. There's a few streams within the infrastructure project,
and that's been financed by BT or E or whatever it is.
OpenReach, yeah.
So it's the providers. So I think the key thing to note, and even though Stephen's given the headline figures, it's all proportionate. So if I take one of those examples and I take skills have attracted more private sector funding than what they planned to. They have secured, and I'll put that in inverted commas, so was it 4.5 million? I think it was, Stephen, or thereabouts. Just shy of 5 million. That, I think that was their target overall. So they are doing amazingly well, as are digital. Some of the other projects, we know there are things in the pipeline. So one of the examples that Stephen gave was around support innovation, low carbon growth. They've gone through 2 calls to do the property development fund, and they have subscribed that. So they will hopefully overshoot what their private sector target is. So every project and program has different values, and we've got that breakdown. That's all publicly available and is in the business case. And I think what we can try and do, Stephen, is try and demonstrate that achievement to target to date around. But if private sector is of interest, we can do a more specific report if it's not clear enough in Q4 monitoring to show what that achievement is to date. But it comes back to what I said earlier on. Some of these buildings haven't even been built yet, but we have attracted private sector funding, even if we haven't built some of those buildings. It comes through other means. So impact of things it's not linear. Some things can happen up front with attracting collaborations and partnerships and other things around the infrastructure that we're building for City Deal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Giles, did you want to add anything to that? Because I know that Councillor Holly mentioned your name in what you said at the start, but are you happy with that in terms of response?
Yeah. I mean, we did talk in the pre-meeting. I do miss the old benefits realization spreadsheet we used to have. So I don't know whether that's going to we're going to try and reincarnate it, even if it's just for us, because I've gone through each of the reports and looked at the job numbers, and I appreciate it. I do fully appreciate, even though we mentioned every time for the job numbers, we'd expect to increase as we get towards the end. But it's handy to first have a ready reckoner, and I can't see a ready reckoner of jobs in the reports. You have to go through each of them.
I'll double check what you get, because we have that in the office, but we'll, if we need to make things a bit clearer, we'll do that.
Yeah, well, I sent to Tom what we used to have, so I don't, Tom, if you can hook up and just see, because I just thought it was handy. I mean, for me, I mean, and Councillor Holly, we've mentioned it a few times. I mean, just going through it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John. In terms of the campuses project, it's projected to create 1,120 jobs. It's currently at 9.
Yeah.
And that's up 4. So I don't know if it's up 4 to 13 or it's up from 5 to 9. I wasn't quite sure there.
So total is 9, yeah. But again, and campuses.
I appreciate there's different slants on it. So I think it's worth me just telling everybody else, in the thing. It's only going to take me 30 seconds to go through this. So Pembroke Dock is supposed to create 1,881 jobs.
Yeah.
That's currently created 17 and 6 apprenticeships.
It should be 77.
Sorry, it is 77. That's my error. That's my error. So 77 and 6 apprenticeships.
Yeah.
The homes as power stations target is 1,804. That's currently at 51 and 1 apprenticeship.
Yeah, that's right.
Reggin is 400. Target was 427. That's currently at 117 and 22 apprenticeships.
Yeah.
The waterfront is due to create, or projected to create, 1,281. That's currently at 425 and 18 apprenticeships.
Yeah.
And the digital infrastructure has created 13 jobs. I couldn't find a target for
that. They had skills and talent and digital infrastructure, the 0 target for their business cases. But they've actually, and again, both of them have created jobs, even though their target is 0.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And Pendrawl then is obviously, that's projected for 1,853, and that's currently at 77 with 67 apprenticeships, which is encouraging in terms of apprenticeships there. But that's the sort of thing really I'd just like to see in one quick spreadsheet. I think it would benefit us, and I'm sure
we have the information, Giles. So we'll make sure that information is flowing through to the committee. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we are. Thank you, Jonathan. I can't see any more questions, so we'll move on. As mentioned, the report is for information purposes, so we note the report. Moving on to item 8, Joint Committee Interim Budget 25-26, pages 193 to 198, and over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So as you're aware, the Joint Committee had previously agreed and set a 5-year operational budget, which has been revised on a continual basis. So this 5-year operational budget ended last year in 24-25, requiring a budget to be agreed for this new year, the 25-26. And then this is in line with internal audit recommendations, as Charlotte previously mentioned in her internal audit report. So if I can draw your attention to Appendix A, that's on page 197, I believe. So you can see the total operational budget for the new year is costed at 1.323 million. And this will be funded in part through the interest income earned and the 1.5% top slice of the government grant, which gets dispersed in the year. So you can see that the interim budget resulted in a in-year surplus of 34,000. So then this reduces the carry forward deficit balance from 24-25, which is 247,000. And then this will bring this deficit down to 213,000. So I want to point out that this deficit will be offset by the future top slice generated over the remainder city deal period when the constituent local authority draws down their grants. We have circa about 1.14 million worth of top slice available left to to be received once the grants are dispersed to the local authorities. So I can take you to then section 4, That's on page 194, 195. You can see the budget basis and assumptions we used to then make up this interim budget. For example, we use a salary inflation of 3.5%, and then for all other categories, we use an inflation figure of 2.5%. I'll quickly run you through, I'm conscious of time, so I'll run you through the basis used. So we assume that the project management office will continue to operate from the beacon, so this is the rents and rates associated with this. With all the SLA arrangements between the city deal and its constituent local authorities, we've increased these by 3.5%. These are salary based, so that's why we use the 3.5%. And most importantly, is with regard to the staffing of the POMO, we've assumed that the two vacancies, the project management PMO manager, and the project development manager posts will remain vacant for the year. With regards to fees, so it's expenditure, we're going to continue with the Soloxis software, project management software for the year, cost of around about £1,000. We're planning to conduct an annual assurance review, the cost of £6,000. So this is a requirement from the UK and Welsh governments to in the delivery of the City Deal portfolio. We're also going to undertake planning to undertake a milestone economic evaluation with a cost of around about £16,000. So we want to use this to evaluate the success of the portfolio and achieving its aims. And we also have a budget of £50,000 for the conferences, marketing, and advertising to raise the success stories of the City Deal. So with regard to income, we're hoping to achieve a top slice of around about 822,000. So as I said, this is taken from the grant drawdowns based on a partner's forecast, which we received in Q4 24-25. Yeah, so that is my quick summary. Ideally, we should have done the Q4 outturn first, because that was fed into some of the figures. But I'm not sure if anybody has any questions on this.
No, I am.
No questions on this. This report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 9, this is you again, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks. So this is the Q4 provisional outturn. These figures haven't been audited yet, and they are in the process of being audited by Audit Wales. So this report is on page 199 of the report pack and sets out the Q4 financial monitoring and year-end position of the Joint Committee and Portfolio Investment Fund for 24-25. So the report's split into several sections, but if I start with the Appendix A on page 206, and on this appendix, if we start to look at the Portfolio Management Office, this is the bulk of the expenditure. You can see that the total for the year was 469,000, of which 419 was staffing costs, and this again incorporated the 24-25 pay award. You can see for the staffing, this was an underspend of 184,000 against salary budget. We budget for all salary posts at the top of the grade. Not all posts are currently on the top of the grade, so there's always some variation there. And as I said, we have 2 staffing vacancies for the majority of the year, the PMO manager and the project development manager. Income for the year, we received a total income of 2.83 million. Of this, 272,000 came from the top slice from the dispersed grants, and we earned, which we then dispersed, 2.56 million interest on our cash balances. But that's an in and out, so you'll see in the outturn £2.56 million interest, then also 2.56 million expenditure. So if I draw your attention to the bottom of that appendix is a statement of balances. This is where we can see the reserve position. So 23-24 we had a reserve of 182.9 thousand. So 24-25 we had a deficit of around 439,000 then, which results, once you take into account the credit from the previous year, we've got a deficit of just over £250,000 at the end of 24-25. So again, although this is a deficit, this will be offset. It's purely timing issue of the top slice from the grant, and this will be offset in future years. I'm bouncing around a little bit, sorry, but if you move on to section 3.1. So, sorry, does anybody have any questions before I move on to the portfolio investment fund? No. Great. So section 3.1 is the total of the portfolio investment. So as John mentioned, we're now projecting around about the 1.374 billion. So 100 million increase on the budget we had. Part of this is due to digital infrastructure, and again, we mentioned this with the with the private sector. But so digital infrastructure have an additional 72 million private sector investment leveraged by the project. So this has been driven by all active fibre network providers across the region. Pembroke Dock Marine, additional 3 million private sector investment, the majority of which comes from the Neath project. Pentre Owl, there's been a retendering process for Pentre Owl, and the budget has been revised to take into account higher anticipated construction costs for Zone 1 elements and additional public sector investments for Zone 2 to 4. So this has led to an increase of 12 million, 10.2 million, which has been secured through the local authority lead to ensure the affordability of the project, with the remaining 2 million being planned to be raised through private sector contributions. Supporting innovation and low carbon growth is additional 11 million investment against budget, 8.2 million from the government Tata Transition Fund. The annual investment forecast for the year, and John did mention this in his previous section, for the year, total investments, this public, private and grant, was 97 million against a budget which we originally planned of 157. And these are variances across the entire portfolio, but mainly due to digital infrastructure having delays in their procurement activity. HAPs, they require reprofile to reflect the completion of the timeline of the housing developments. And again, as I mentioned, Pentre Owl, sorry, my dogs are barking. So for Pentre Owl, as a consequence of the extended construction programme for Zone 1 and the ongoing planning of the assisted living and wellness hotel, there's been adjustment to as and when the local authority proposes to bring forward these future phases of development. So due to this resequencing, private sector contributions are now reflected in later years of the project. For support innovation and low carbon growth, its switch project seen delays, which meant the planning progression to REBA stage 4 and planning didn't happen until late in the year. And its APMF projects, there's been issues with the identification, negotiation and remediation of the required land. That's again delayed this element of the project. So to conclude, although the financial spend in the year has varied by 155 million, these are being reprofiled to be utilised in years 9 to 11, so that's 26, 27 to 28, 29, and there's no reported effect to total outputs, investment or benefits of the portfolio. So thank you very much, Chair. I'm quite happy for any questions, if there's any.
Any members got any questions, please? No, I don't see any. As stated, this report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 10, Q4 2024-25 portfolio monitoring, pages 209 to 330. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Chair. As we said on things, there will be overlap between the portfolio business case having Q4 monitoring and what myself and Stephen will cover, but I'll try and eliminate as much duplication on this one. So Q4 monitoring, if I start off on the dashboard information, we've got the red, amber, green status table. So there's only 2 changes to note on that. Pentre Owl delivery moved from amber to green. The overall status for Pentre Owl is now green, with the remaining construction works focusing on the kind of final finishing, the fit outs, the mechanical, electrical services. And since reporting, that has moved on a lot further. So there's a higher degree of confidence and handover program, which will hopefully happen within the next month into the summer. In terms of digital infrastructure, the scope went from amber to green. There was no change to the overall status. What digital do are economic appraisals. So that's the only one that we currently have through the pipeline. So they had a midterm economic appraisal carried out by a company called Farpoint in Q3 24-25. And it shows that the program is on track and it's exceeding its GVA targets of what they estimated that to be. And as Stephen pointed out, from a financial perspective, we are attracting more private sector funding quicker than what we planned to. That's good for everyone in the region because that means that we can use the City Deal Pound to get to the more harder to reach areas around rural and other parts of the programme. In terms of portfolio risks, there are still 3 red risks: increase of construction costs, projects programmes not delivering outputs and outcomes, which have been defined in their business cases, and the 10-15 flood risk management maps. We have closed 3 risks in the last quarter in Q4. That was around cancellation of meetings because they have been regular and happening on a quarterly basis. Lack of alignment of comms between partners. Things are flowing a lot better that's more what I would call internal comms across the region. And the third one then is failure to identify and secure revenue funding. And again, relating to what Stephen's been doing with the governments, we seem to be hovering around 4.5% to 5% of revenue funding across the portfolio, which sits within the kind of parameters that we've agreed with the governments. In terms of the portfolio issues, so we have red issues. That's increased from 2 to 3. So first of all was the in-year variance. We've reported that there was a significant variance in what we forecasted to what was actual. And as I said, we're mitigating that by going out with all projects and programs to better forecasting in future years. And that's happening next week. There's also rising construction costs. That is a risk and it's an issue because some of it has potential to happen and others are actually in the pipeline, they're happening. So and variance against delivery of program projects against what we call key milestones. So it's between now and 2033, the variance in delivery of timescales between now and then. So in terms of portfolio benefits, we have increased jobs. It's gone from 742 to 896, as I pointed out earlier. The increase was around support innovation, low carbon growth and homes as power stations. But we are getting incremental increases quarter on quarter around portfolio benefits. And the investment to date has increased from 459 million to 536 million. And again, that was mainly down to digital infrastructure and homes as power stations. In relation to the procurement pipeline, there was minimal change since Q2 24-25, so there's nothing to report on that. Construction impact assessment. The updated cost variance and risk status summary can be found in the report under table 4.1. The estimated variance of the 17 project elements yet to be delivered is around, well, it's just under 45 million. In terms of risk status across the projects and programs, we have 3 at green, 7 at amber, 3 at red and 4 to be confirmed. So again, we have a bit more granular detail across the portfolio of those projects yet to be delivered. So the red areas, I won't cover all of them, but the red areas are Pentra Owl Zone 2, around the affordable and social housing, and also Zone 3, the expansion of life sciences and business centre, and the campuses, Morriston Centre in phase 1. It's probably worth also noting, Chair, the to be confirmed areas. So that's campuses phase 2 for both Morriston and Sketty Lane, Areg in phase 2, and Swansea Waterfront Innovation Precinct. But what I'm trying to get across on this report is that hopefully providing confidence that we are monitoring these and we're identifying any cost variances as soon as we can, and then what mitigations we're doing to plug the funding gap effectively. In terms of the private sector contribution, again, we've touched on this a little bit. This was updated since January 25. It summarises the achievements and forecasts for private sector. We do have mitigations across the board for private sector contributions, but we are estimating it to be higher than originally anticipated from 637 million. We are looking now at around about just under 720 million So we are looking at a £83 million increase in forecast, which is a very positive story. I'll highlight, there's lots of information in the pack around the project program updates, but if I just cover off some of the key things, so support innovation, low carbon growth, there's the Bay Technology Centre. In the report, it says it's 75% occupied. That has now increased to 85% since the report has come out. And they have a series of companies in the pipeline to complete that up to 100% occupancy. There was the official opening of the high value manufacturing catapult earlier in the year in February, which again helps support a lot of the businesses in or around the region. And the advanced manufacturing production facility, the land acquisition is complete. And since we've had this report, they've also plugged a gap of funding, which was through the Tata Steel Transition Board. So basically that project has a green light to proceed, which again is one of those projects that are in the pipeline, but yet to be built. Skills and talent, we are now up to 25 pilot projects being approved, and 5 apprenticeship developments have been received and approved by the RLSP board. There was a skills and talent project workshop, and that provided an opportunity for current pilot project leads and the city deal leads to review progress, look at lessons learned, and how to develop further pilot projects. So again, a positive step of reflecting on what we've done, but also celebrating the key achievements of those pilots. Pentre Owl, I mentioned, moved from an amber to green in delivery. Carmarthenshire Council and the Health Board have gone into an agreement, and that was in March, for leasing space in Pentre Owl. And there are transition plans to reflect the readiness for opening this summer. We are yet to get a specific date, but that is hopefully going to happen within the next month or so. Digital infrastructure, as I said, scope moved from amber to green, which is good. The project and program within the business case, they're on track to achieve the objectives on time, but noting that they did extend the delivery period by a year about 9 months ago. But in relation to some of the activity that they're doing, there's things like full fibre. It was mentioned by one of the councillors earlier on. They're providing full fibre to 68 public sector sites. They're up to 78% of that completion at the report in Q4. They've actually progressed that further again, so they're on track for that. They've identified a preferred supplier for one of the procurements on dark fibre for Carmarthenshire, so now that is progressing. They completed the Better Broadband Infill project procurement as well, and they appointed a preferred supplier, so that's currently in delivery. And they completed their benefits realisation exercise for 23-24. And it comes back to our points that we've said several times. They are demonstrating significant investment across the region. And what I need to point out with that is by design. It's not just by chance. The way that they've established themselves, they've got digital champions within all of the key organisations. They are working really well together with the providers, and it's seen as an exemplar, not just for our region, but across Wales and beyond. So again, a positive news story around that. Homes as power stations has come up in conversation already, but what they've done, they've got 2 parts of their funds. What they've just put out is an expression of interest stage for the Homes as Power Stations Supply Chain Development Fund. That will attract further private sector funding. Again, as a kind of verbal update, those expression of interest have been assessed, and they are now out to full application for those that were successful in getting put through that process. So hopefully we'll start seeing more secured private sector funding through that £7 million initiative. For those on the call that were fortunate to go and look, there was a demo house project with Titarian and the Welsh School of Architecture and Cardiff University. Over 370 people visited the demo houses or demo house from 38 different organisations. And again, just from awareness raising and having conversations and the things that came from that with these organisations, that certainly paid dividends. So, and people on the call may reflect on that as well if they attended. What Homes as Power Stations are also trying to do is do various events. The most recent one was a company called Dakin Heat Pumps. They had an event in February down the National Botanical Gardens for Wales. And the whole point of having these companies come in and doing these events is that partly it's about the technology and what can go in homes, but it's also about people who are trained and qualified and fitters and suppliers of these products as well. And what we're hoping in the more medium to longer term is that companies will reside within our region, not only fitting them, but producing these type of products as well. Just a couple of projects left. So Pembroke Dock Marine, as we all know, the infrastructure is largely done. They've got one thing left to do, which is called Lot 3, which is around the transportation corridor. But what they're in their report, they are providing lots of key deliverables that they're working with partners and securing funding, both for deployment, testing. There's stuff around X-band radars, if anybody's into that, or bilateral funding with UK and Singapore. So there's a whole host of different things in there where you can see the activity now ramping up for all the partners down in Pembroke Dock Marine and the port in particular. Campuses, Scrutiny Lane Phase 1 planning has been submitted to Swansea Council back in March. I believe it's imminent as to the decision on that. So hopefully within the next few days or weeks, we'll find out that that's hopefully been approved. They are at what they call Reba Stage 3, going into Reba Stage 4 of designs. And the university and the health board are putting in a change request on which will come through your board in due course, looking at the Phase 1 for Morriston and Scrutiny Lane. There's also the 5G Vodafone bid. So that came through the digital infrastructure, but applying it to the campuses project. So the planning has now been approved for those 5G masts on Singleton campus. So that project is also progressing between those two projects. Last project, I think, Chair, is the waterfront. So this is based in Swansea. So 7172 Kingsway. The last report that we had was tenant leases for over 75% of the office space has already been secured and progressed. The launch of the event, if anybody is going to that tomorrow, is in 7172 Kingsway in tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be there, so I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. Swansea Arena Hotel, the heads of terms of the preferred hotel developer has been provisionally agreed. We haven't got any further information apart from they're going through the detail of that heads of terms with the developer. So hopefully we'll have an announcement on that soon. The Innovation Matrix, when this was reported, they launched officially in March 24th of March. We had brilliant social media coverage around that. At that point in time, they had 90% occupancy. I can now confirm that they've got 100% occupancy of that building. So it shows the demand is there for businesses to want to reside within these type of buildings, which is brilliant. And then the Innovation Precinct, which is one of the ones that as I mentioned earlier on, which is to be confirmed. So the university's Vice Chancellor, and also that's for Trinity St David, and senior management in the council, Swansea Council, they're looking at alternative delivery models for the precinct. So until those start coming through the pipeline in a change request, we hope to get those in coming months. So, Chair, that is a very quick, as I always say, whistle-stop tour of all the different activity that's been undertaken across the portfolio.
Thank you very much for that, Jonathan. Do any members have any questions? No, thank you. This report is for information, so we note the report. Moving on to item 11, Forward Work Programme 25-26, pages 331 to 338. Tom?
Thank you, Chair. We had a good discussion in pre-briefing, obviously, about sort of some of the committee's priorities. What I'll do is I'll go away and speak to Jonathan and his colleague Amanda on some of those. I know Councillor Morgan's already brought up one of them today, so that's good. So it sounds like Jonathan's got some ways that we can incorporate that, so that's really positive. As we mentioned, as the Chair mentioned before, if you've got anything that you'd like to add to the Forward Work Programme, please let the Chair, Vice Chair or myself know, and we can speak with officers about trying to get those programmed in. But for now, obviously, it's the new civic year, so we'll sort of carry on as we normally do with the regular reports, and then see if we can fit in anything else. One thing I did want to bring up, I know we have the opening ceremony tomorrow of 71 to 72 Kingsway. Some members have indicated that they are attending either as part of this committee or I think as members of Swansea Council anyway. So just to remind everyone about that. I know some members also haven't been able to attend, so I've passed those apologies on. And again, if there are any site visits that members would like to have, because I know those have been really really helpful, and I know Jonathan referred to how positive they've been as well. That's something that we can also look at this year as well. So I'll just pass you back to the chair.
Thank you for that, Tom. Anybody got any questions? No. So we note the forward work programme. Item 12, urgent items. You'll all be glad to know we don't have any urgent items. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, all the officers for your reports, and all members for giving your time up to come and join us today. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend and see you next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.